In a world governed by strict rules and cosmic boundaries, Caleb never expected to find something as wild and untamed as Zyra, an enigmatic force of nature with silver skin and a heart as unyielding as the stars. When their paths collide, it's not just the universe that's set to burn. If you enjoyed this captivating cosmic tale, make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button for more epic stories of love, rebellion, and adventure across the stars. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Caleb and Zyra's journey. How far will their love go in a universe that tries to dim them? Don't miss out on the next chapter. Turn on notifications to stay updated on the adventure. The hallway E7 stretched out, a narrow corridor lined with humming energy conduits that cast a soft, purple glow across the metallic walls. The air was cool, tinged with the faint scent of ozone from the plasma lights overhead, their faint buzz the only sound breaking the silence of the night shift. Caleb Varn knelt beside an access panel, his toolkit clattering softly as he adjusted a conduit, his movements practiced and precise. Pulsar, the massive space station, was a marvel of engineering, but its labyrinth of rules and maintenance logs could drive anyone to distraction. For Caleb, the night shift was a sanctuary. No officers barking orders, no paperwork to drown in, just him and the steady hum of the station's core. He was halfway through recalibrating a power relay when a soft scrape echoed down the hall. Caleb glanced up, his breath catching. A figure was there, kneeling on the polished floor, a plasma scrubber in hand, its faint glow illuminating her. She was unlike anyone he'd seen. Her skin shimmered with a silvery sheen, like stardust caught in moonlight, and her eyes glowed a vivid green, like polished jade under the station's lights. Long, dark hair spilled over her shoulders, framing a face that was both alien and captivating. Her jumpsuit, standard issue for sanitation crew, was anything but standard on her. It hugged her curves, a few strategic tears at the seams revealing glimpses of that luminous skin, the front zipper pulled just low enough to skirt regulation. "Not seeing me here, technician." Her voice was smooth, like a melody from some distant world, laced with a teasing edge. Caleb blinked, nearly dropping his wrench. "No, just checking the conduits," he stammered, his face warming as he tried to focus on the panel. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate, like a predator stretching after a nap. "On my planet, Lyris, we bow low when meeting strangers," she said, her jade eyes locking onto his. "It shows trust and a bit of invitation." Caleb scratched the back of his neck, unsure if he was supposed to salute or run. "Caleb, I fixed things." "Zyra," she replied, her lips curving into a smile that showed a hint of sharp, pearlescent teeth. "I make things shine." She leaned forward slightly, one hand resting on her hip, the jumpsuit pulling taut. "This hallway's filthy, Caleb. I'll be back often." He swallowed, his throat dry. "Filthy? Looks pretty clean to me." Zyra chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down his spine. "Oh, you'd be surprised how dirty things get when you're not looking." She tilted her head, studying him. "Night shift, huh? You like being alone in the dark." "Not always," Caleb said, finding his voice. "But it's quieter. Less distractions." "Distractions?" Zyra's smile widened, and she took a step closer, the plasma scrubber dangling from her hand like a prop. "Am I distracting you, Caleb?" He coughed, glancing at his toolkit as if it held the answer. "Maybe a little." "Good," she purred, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "On Lyris, we say a shared moment is twice as bright. You should try it sometime." Caleb raised an eyebrow, his nerves giving way to curiosity. "Shared moment? That a cleaning metaphor?" Zyra's laugh was soft, almost musical. "Call what you want, but I think you and I could make this station sparkle." She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the motion drawing his eyes to the curve of her neck, where her skin seemed to pulse faintly with light. "I'm not sure the station's rules would agree," Caleb said, half joking, though the thought of Pulsar's strict protocols flashed through his mind. "Rules?" Zyra's eyes gleamed with mischief. "They're just guidelines, technician, and guidelines are made to be bent." She paused, letting the word hang in the air, then stepped even closer, close enough that he caught a faint scent. Ozone mixed with something sweeter, like lavender from a distant nebula. You ever been to Guideline, Caleb? His heart thudded, and he forced himself to meet her gaze. Not yet, but I'm a quick learner. Zyra's smile turned approving, almost predatory. I like that. Quick learners get special assignments. She reached out, her fingers brushing his toolkit, lingering just a moment too long. You know, these conduits aren't the only things that need attention around here. Caleb's mouth went dry, his mind scrambling for a response. Attention? Like maintenance. Exactly, she said, her voice a velvet caress. Some systems need a careful touch, a little pressure to keep them running smoothly. She leaned in, her breath warm against his ear. Think you can handle that, technician? He managed a shaky grin, his confidence flickering to life. I've handled worse, but I might need a demonstration. Zyra pulled back, her eyes sparkling with amusement. A demonstration? Bold move, Caleb. She twirled the plasma scrubber in her hand, the motion fluid and mesmerizing. Maybe next time. I don't give out free lessons on the first night. Fair enough, Caleb said, his voice steadier now. But I'll hold you to that. Oh, you will, Zyra promised, her tone dripping with certainty. She turned, her hips swaying slightly as she walked toward the end of the hallway, the purple light catching the silver of her skin like a comet's tail. Don't work too hard, technician. You'll need your energy for other tasks. Caleb watched her go, his toolkit forgotten at his feet, the conduit panel blinking unattended. The air seemed warmer now, charged with something electric, something that had nothing to do with Pulsar's power grid. Zyra's footsteps faded, leaving only the faint echo of her laugh and that lingering scent of lavender and ozone. He shook his head, trying to focus, but his mind was already replaying her words, her smile, the way her jumpsuit had clung to her like a second skin. The station's core thrummed in the distance, a steady pulse that matched the rhythm in his chest. Caleb picked up his wrench, but his hands felt unsteady. His thoughts tangled in the memory of jade eyes and a voice that could make maintenance sound like seduction. Pulsar was full of surprises, but none like Zyra, and something told him this was only the beginning. The maintenance bay on level 6 was a maze of machinery, its air thick with the tang of heated metal and the faint hum of Pulsar's energy core. Coils of plasma wiring hung from the ceiling, their faint blue glow casting flickering shadows across the cluttered space. Caleb Varn maneuvered through the narrow aisles, his toolkit slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning for a faulty relay panel listed on his nightly roster. Since meeting Zyra a week ago, the night shift had lost its quiet predictability. Every hum of the station seemed charged, every shadow a potential glimpse of her silver skin. He was prying open a panel when a soft clink sounded behind him. Turning, he froze. Zyra stood in the doorway of a nearby storage closet, her plasma scrubber glowing faintly, illuminating the curve of her jumpsuit. A new tear at the thigh revealed a sliver of shimmering skin, catching the blue light like a distant star. Her dark hair was loosely tied, strands framing her face, and her jade eyes sparkled with that familiar mischief. You check those conduits real thorough, don't you, Caleb? Zyra's voice was a playful tease, her lips curling as she leaned against the doorframe. Caleb gripped his wrench a little tighter, his pulse quickening. Just making sure there's no leaks, he said, managing a half-smile despite the heat creeping up his neck. Zyra sauntered closer, her scrubber dangling from one hand. Leaks, huh? Lucky for you. I'm an expert at handling those. She paused, her gaze flicking over him. But sometimes pressure just needs releasing. He swallowed, her words sparking something reckless in him. Pressure? Sounds like a job for maintenance. Oh, it is, she purred, stepping into his space close enough that he caught her scent, lavender and ozone, sharp and intoxicating. But it takes a steady hand. You got one, technician. Caleb met her eyes, his nervousness giving way to a spark of boldness. Steady enough. You offering to test me? Zyra's laugh was low, vibrating through the cramped bay. Careful, Caleb. I don't test, I demonstrate. She tilted her head, a strand of hair brushing her cheek. Ever think about taking a break from all this fixing? Breaks aren't exactly in the manual, he said, but his eyes lingered on the tear in her jumpsuit, the way it hinted at the curve beneath. Unless you've got a better idea. I always do, Zyra replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. On Lyris, we say a system under stress needs attention. Personal attention. She reached out, her fingers grazing his toolkit, lingering on the handle of a screwdriver. What's your system saying, Caleb? He chuckled, shaking his head, saying I might need a new manual if you keep talking like that. Manuals are overrated, she said, her smile wicked. I prefer hands-on learning. She turned, brushing past him to inspect a nearby coil, her hip grazing his side, sending a jolt through him. This bay's a mess. You should see me clean it up. Caleb watched her move, the way her jumpsuit shifted with each step. I'm starting to think you make things dirty just to clean them. Zyra glanced over her shoulder, her eyes gleaming. Guilty, but only when there's someone worth making a mess for. She knelt to scrub a patch of floor, her movements slow, deliberate, the plasma scrubber's glow highlighting every curve. You gonna stand there all night, or help me out? He crouched beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. Didn't know maintenance included floor duty. It does when I'm around, Zyra said, her voice teasing but softer now. Besides, I like a man who's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Caleb's grin widened. You're trouble, you know that? The best kind, she shot back, nudging him with her elbow. So, what's it like being the lone hero of the night shift? Saving Pulsar one conduit at a time. Hero's a stretch, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Just keeping the lights on. What about you? Cleaning's not exactly glamorous. Zyra's eyes softened, just for a moment. Glamour's overrated. I make things right, Caleb. Clean, orderly. But sometimes she leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek. I like a little chaos. His heart thudded, the air between them crackling. Chaos, huh? That why you keep showing up where I'm working? Maybe, she said, her lips twitching. Or maybe I just like the view. She stood, stretching, the jumpsuit pulling taut, her silhouette framed by the blue glow of the plasma coils. Caleb rose too, his toolkit feeling heavier than usual. View's not bad from here either, he admitted, surprising himself with the boldness. Zyra's laugh was delighted, echoing in the bay. Look at you, technician, getting brave. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his arm, light but deliberate. Keep that up, and I might have to schedule you for overtime. Overtime? Caleb raised an eyebrow, his voice steadier now. What's that entail? Depends, she said, her eyes locking onto his, jade bright and unyielding. Could be a late-night inspection. Could be something else. She let the words hang, then turned toward the closet. Come with me. I need a second pair of hands. He hesitated, glancing at the open panel behind him. My shift's not done. Zyra looked back, her smile a challenge. Shift's never done, Caleb. But moments like this, they don't wait. She disappeared into the closet, leaving the door ajar. The storage closet was a tight space, shelves crammed with spare coils and tools, the air heavy with the scent of metal and faint lavender. The plasma coils overhead pulsed, casting a flickering blue light that danced across Zyra's silver skin as she leaned against a shelf, her jumpsuit slightly unzipped, revealing a hint of collarbone that shimmered like a nebula. Close quarters, Caleb said, stepping inside, his voice low. Best kind, Zyra replied, her gaze never leaving his. You ever work in tight spaces, Caleb? All the time, he said, his throat dry. But this feels different. It should, she whispered, closing the distance between them. On Lyris, we don't waste heat. Her fingers brushed his jaw, cool and electric, and before he could think, her lips met his, a kiss that was soft but searing, like a spark igniting a dormant circuit. The world narrowed to her touch, her scent, the pulse of the station fading into a distant hum. When they parted, her eyes were bright, her breath uneven. That's the kind of maintenance I'm talking about, she said, a grin tugging at her lips. Caleb laughed, breathless, his head spinning. You're gonna get me fired. Worth it, Zyra said, stepping back, her jumpsuit catching the light as she adjusted it. Get back to your conduits, technician. I'll see you around. She slipped out, leaving him alone in the closet, his wrench still in hand, the air still tingling with her presence. The bay felt emptier now, the blue glow of the coils colder. Caleb returned to his panel, but his hands moved on autopilot, his mind replaying that kiss, the way her skin had felt under his fingers. Pulsar's rules were strict, but Zyra was a force no regulation could contain, and he was already caught in her orbit. The maintenance tunnel snaked through Pulsar's underbelly, a claustrophobic artery of exposed wiring and flickering control panels. Dim, amber lights pulsed intermittently, casting jagged shadows across the curved walls, the air thick with the low hum of the station's life support systems. Caleb Varn crawled through the narrow passage, his toolkit strapped to his back, the metallic clank of his movements echoing softly. Since that kiss in the storage closet, his nights had been a blur of stolen moments with Zyra, brief encounters in shadowed corners, each one leaving him more tangled in her orbit. But tonight, the weight of Pulsar's rules felt heavier, like a current ready to short-circuit. He reached a junction where the tunnel widened slightly, a small alcove with a blinking diagnostic screen. Zyra was already there, crouched low, her plasma scrubber set aside, her silver skin catching the amber glow like a beacon. Her jumpsuit was smudged with grime, a new rip near the shoulder exposing a shimmer of collarbone, her dark hair spilling loose from its tie. Her jade eyes, usually playful, held a flicker of something else, tension, maybe fear. Zyra, Caleb said, his voice low, as he eased into the alcove. You okay? She straightened, her gaze sharp. Eagles onto us, Caleb. The AI's been tracking heat signatures, two bodies lingering in storage bays, maintenance tunnels, places we've visited. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened around the edge of a panel. Caleb's stomach dropped, the hum of the tunnel suddenly louder. They know. Not enough to pin us, Zyra said, stepping closer, her eyes searching his. But they're sniffing. Door logs, temperature spikes, offline cameras. It's only a matter of time. He set his toolkit down, the clatter sharp in the confined space. If they catch us, I'll take the fall. They won't touch a Lyran. You're too valuable. Zyra's expression darkened, a flash of defiance in her eyes. Don't play martyr, technician. I'm not some damsel needing your sacrifice. She crossed her arms, the jumpsuit pulling taut. You think I'd let you get spaced for me? Caleb managed a half-smile, despite the knot in his chest. Just saying, I'd rather it be me than you. I'm replaceable. You're not. Replaceable? Zyra's voice softened, but there was an edge to it. Caleb, you're the only human on this rust bucket who doesn't flinch when I get close. That's not replaceable. She stepped forward, her hand brushing his arm, cool and steady. This isn't just a game anymore. Not for me. His breath caught, her words hitting like a surge through a live wire. Zyra, it was never a game, he said, his voice rough. Every time you show up, every time you say something that makes my head spin, I'm in too deep to walk away. She looked at him, her jade eyes softening, the tension in her shoulders easing. You mean that? Because I'm not just talking about stolen kisses in dark corners. I'm talking about us. She hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. I love you, Caleb. The words hung in the air, raw and unguarded, the tunnel's hum fading to nothing. Caleb's heart pounded, a rush of warmth flooding through him. I love you too, he said, stepping closer, his hands finding hers. I don't care about Eagle or the rules. I want you. Every smirk, every tease, every moment you make me forget my own name. Zyra's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, her fingers tightening around his. You're such a human, she murmured. So dramatic, so nice. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his, her breath warm. But I like it. Caleb chuckled, the sound rough in the quiet. Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Not stuck, Zyra said, pulling back to meet his eyes. Chosen. She paused, her gaze flickering to the diagnostic screen, its amber light reflecting in her eyes. But we need to be smarter. Eagle's not just a machine. It's got the whole station wired. One wrong move, and we're done. He nodded, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. So we lay low. No more late-night inspections. Zyra's smile turned mischievous, though worry lingered in her eyes. Don't tempt me, technician. I'm not built for laying low. She tilted her head, her hair brushing his shoulder. But maybe we pick our moments better. Fewer closets, more creative spots. Creative spots. Caleb raised an eyebrow, his voice lighter now. You got a map of those I don't know about? Not a map, she said, her tone teasing again. A sense. Lyrans are good at finding warm places. Her fingers trailed up his arm, stopping just short of his jaw. You trust me to find them? More than I trust myself right now, he admitted, his pulse quickening at her touch. But you're making it real hard to focus on conduits. Zyra laughed, the sound bright in the dim tunnel. Focus is overrated. You're doing fine, just following my lead. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. And you're a damn good follower. Caleb's grin widened, his nerves sparking. Careful, Zyra. Keep talking like that, and I might start leading. Try it, she challenged, her eyes gleaming. I'd like to see you try. She stepped back, her jumpsuit catching the amber light, her silhouette sharp against the tunnel's curves. But not tonight. We got enough heat on us already. He nodded, though every instinct screamed to pull her back. Deal. But you owe me a demonstration. For next time. Zyra's smile was a promise, her voice a velvet whisper. Oh, I'll deliver, technician. Count on it. She picked up her scrubber, her movements fluid, then paused at the tunnel's edge. Watch your back, Caleb. Eagle's got eyes, but I've got better ones. The alcove felt smaller now, the amber lights harsher, as Zyra's footsteps faded into the tunnel's depths. Caleb stood alone, his hand still tingling where hers had been, the diagnostic screen blinking like a silent warning. The air was heavy, charged with the weight of her words. Love, risk, defiance. He knelt to retrieve his toolkit, but his mind was elsewhere, caught in the memory of her touch, her confession, the way her eyes had held his like a gravitational pull. Pulsar's core thrummed below, a steady pulse that matched the rhythm in his chest. The station's rules were a cage, but Zyra was a key, unlocking something reckless and alive in him. Whatever came next, Eagle's scrutiny or worse, he wasn't backing down. Not from her, not from this. The tunnel stretched on, dark and unyielding, but for the first time, Caleb felt like he was moving towards something brighter than the station's lights. The central command chamber of Pulsar was a stark contrast to the station's underbelly, its polished walls gleaming under the cold glow of holographic displays. A massive table dominated the room, its surface projecting a rotating model of the station, while data streams flickered like fireflies across the air. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with the weight of authority, the faint hum of the station's core barely audible through the soundproofed walls. Caleb Varn stood at one end of the chamber, his toolkit absent, his work jumpsuit feeling too tight under the scrutiny of 3 senior officers seated across from him. Beside him, Zyra stood tall, her silver skin catching the hollow light, her sanitation jumpsuit smudged but defiant, a fresh tear near the elbow adding to her untamed allure. Her dark hair was pulled back, but loose strands framed her face, and her jade eyes burned with a quiet intensity. The lead officer, a stern woman with a datapad in hand, tapped the screen, her voice clipped. Varn, Zyra, you've been summoned to address violations of Regulation 9.2. Prohibition of personal relationships on Pulsar. We have evidence, heat signatures, door logs, and a rather incriminating audio clip of you discussing hot conduits in Bay 6. Caleb's face warmed, his mind flashing to Zyra's teasing in the maintenance bay. That was just enough. The officer cut him off, her eyes narrowing. Explain yourselves. Now, Zyra stepped forward before Caleb could speak, her posture unyielding, her voice clear and resonant. I'll explain. I love Caleb Varn, a human. On Lyris, we bow low to show trust. I bowed to him the first day we met, and I'd do it again right here. She turned, her gaze sweeping the officers, daring them to interrupt. You can't regulate a heart. Not mine, not his. Caleb stifled a laugh, the tension in his shoulders easing. I think she's made that pretty clear, he said, his voice lighter than he felt, a grin tugging at his lips. The second officer, a wiry man with a permanent frown, leaned forward. This isn't a joke, Varn. Relationships compromise station efficiency. Cross-species ones? They're a morale risk. You're both on thin ice. Zyra's eyes flashed, her tone sharp but controlled. Morale risk? You think love's the problem? Try your endless protocols choking the life out of this place. She gestured to the hollow display. You've got eagles spying on every breath we take, but you can't stop what's real. Caleb glanced at her, admiration swelling in his chest. She's right, he said, stepping closer to her. You can't wiretap feelings. We're not breaking Pulsar. We're just living. The lead officer's jaw tightened, her fingers drumming on the datapad. Living? You've been sneaking around, disabling cameras, falsifying logs. That's not living. That's misconduct. Zyra crossed her arms, her jumpsuit catching the light, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Misconduct? I clean your floors, keep your panel spotless, and you call me a problem because I found someone who sees me? On Lyris, we honor connection, not control. Caleb nodded, his voice firm. And I fix your systems, keep this station running. But Zyra? She's the only thing keeping me from losing it in this maze of rules. The third officer, a younger man with a skeptical look, spoke up. You're admitting to the relationship, then? Knowing it could mean reassignment, or worse. Zyra's smile was defiant, her eyes locked on Caleb. I'm admitting I'd rather lose my job than lose him. What's your next question? Caleb's heart skipped, her words igniting something fierce in him. Same here, he said, meeting her gaze. You want to ship me off? Fine, but you won't ship out what we've got. The lead officer sighed, exchanging glances with her colleagues. This isn't a romance holodrama. Pulsar stability comes first. You've got one chance to deny this and walk away clean. Zyra laughed, a bright, unapologetic sound that filled the chamber. Deny it? I'd sooner scrub the reactor core with my bare hands. She turned to Caleb, her voice softening. What do you say, technician? You denying anything? Not a damn thing, Caleb said, his grin widening. I'm with her. All the way. The second officer shook his head, muttering, You're both fools. Maybe, Zyra said, her tone teasing but fierce. But we're fools who know what matters. She reached for Caleb's hand, her fingers cool and strong, her touch grounding him in the sterile room. You can write your reports, but you can't rewrite us. The lead officer tapped her datapad, her expression unreadable. You're dismissed for now. You'll both receive 2 weeks of isolated duty, opposite ends of the station. No contact. We'll review your status after. Caleb's stomach twisted, but Zyra's grip tightened, her voice low, meant only for him. Don't worry, Caleb. I know every vent in this place. They can't keep us apart. He squeezed her hand, a spark of defiance flaring. Good, because I'm not done with those demonstrations you promised. Zyra's eyes gleamed, a playful edge returning. Oh, you'll get them, technician. Just wait. She released his hand, turning to the officers with a mock salute. Anything else? Or can I get back to making your station shine? The lead officer waved them off, her voice curt. Go. But watch yourselves. Eagle's watching too. As they left the chamber, the heavy doors hissing shut behind them, the corridor outside felt like a different world. The hollow lights faded, replaced by the familiar purple glow of Pulsar's standard lighting, the air cooler, but no less charged. Zyra's jumpsuit shimmered as she walked, her stride confident, but she glanced at Caleb, her expression softer, almost vulnerable. That was bold, Caleb said, falling in a step beside her. You didn't have to go all in like that. Zyra stopped, turning to face him, her jade eyes searching his. Yes, I did. I'm not hiding anymore, Caleb. Not from them, not from you. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper. You with me? Always, he said, his hand brushing her cheek, her skin cool under his fingers. Even if it means scrubbing floors at the ass end of Pulsar. She laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. Careful, technician. I might hold you to that. She leaned in, her lips grazing his, a brief, electric kiss that sent a jolt through him. 2 weeks apart? They're dreaming. Caleb grinned, his heart racing. Let him dream. We've got better plans. Zyra pulled back, her smile a mix of defiance and promise. Damn right we do. She turned, heading down the corridor, her silhouette sharp against the purple light, her voice drifting back. Stay sharp, Caleb. I'll find you. The corridor stretched empty now, the hum of Pulsar's systems a steady undercurrent. Caleb stood there, the memory of her kiss lingering, her words echoing in his mind. The chamber's sterile authority felt distant, irrelevant, against the fire Zyra had sparked in him. 2 weeks of isolation was a challenge, not a barrier. Pulsar's rules could bind the station, but they couldn't bind them. Not now, not ever. The observation deck on Pulsar's uppermost level was a forgotten relic, a wide, circular chamber with a domed transparasteel ceiling that opened to the cosmos. Beyond the glass, a distant pulsar spun, its rhythmic bursts of light painting the room in waves of silver and violet, each pulse casting fleeting constellations across the polished floor. The air was cool, tinged with the sterile scent of recycled oxygen, but it carried a quiet intimacy, a sanctuary from the station's relentless hum. Caleb Varn leaned against a low railing, his work jumpsuit unbuttoned at the collar, his toolkit stashed in a corner. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the command chamber, and though Pulsar's rules still loomed, he and Zyra had carved out their own orbit, a secret dance of stolen moments. Zyra slipped into the deck, her silhouette framed by the Pulsar's glow, her sanitation jumpsuit now marked with a supervisor stripe, a testament to her recent promotion. Her silver skin shimmered, catching the light like a living galaxy, and her dark hair hung loose, brushing her shoulders. A small tear near the cuff of her sleeve hinted at her hands-on nature, her jade eyes bright with a mix of mischief and warmth as they found Caleb. Conduit in G. 9 needs maintenance, she said, her voice low and teasing as she crossed the deck. Brought your wrench and some focus, technician? Caleb grinned, pushing off the railing to meet her. Focus? Hard to come by when you're around, Zyra. She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that echoed in the quiet. Good. I'd hate to make things too easy for you. She stopped just short of him, her gaze flicking to the pulsar outside. Nice spot you picked. Not many come up here. Figured we needed somewhere Eagle can't snoop, Caleb said, his tone lighter than the weight of their reality. Plus, the view's not bad. Zyra's lips curved, her eyes locking onto his. View's better in here. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his sleeve, cool and deliberate. You holding up, Caleb? 2 weeks apart didn't break you, but this sneaking around, it's not exactly a Lyran love ballad. He caught her hand, his thumb tracing her knuckles. It's worth it. Every vent, every coded message, every time I see you, it's worth it. His voice softened, the words raw. You're worth it. Zyra's expression softened, her usual tease giving way to something deeper. You humans, she murmured, her free hand resting on his chest. Always saying things that make my system skip. She leaned in, her breath warm against his cheek. You know, on Lyris, we don't hide love. We wear it, loud and bright. Caleb's heart thudded, his hand sliding to her waist. Wish we could do that here. Walk into the mess hall, hold your hand, let everyone see. She tilted her head, her hair catching the pulsar's light. Tempting, but I like our little rebellion. Her voice dropped, conspiratorial. Makes every touch electric. Electric, huh? Caleb's grin returned, his fingers tightening on her waist. You're gonna have to explain that one. Zyra's laugh was soft, her eyes gleaming. Oh, I'll show you. She pulled him toward the center of the deck, where the pulsar's light pooled brightest, and sat, patting the floor beside her. See, technician, let's make this moment shine. He joined her, their shoulders brushing, the floor cool beneath them. "You're the boss now," he teased, nodding at her supervisor stripe. "Ordering me around already?" "Damn right," Zyra said, her tone playful. "But I'm a fair boss. Follow my lead, and you might get a bonus." She leaned back, her jumpsuit shifting to reveal a sliver of silver skin, her gaze fixed on the Pulsar. "Ever think about what's out there, Caleb? Beyond Pulsar?" "All the time," he said, his voice quieter now. "Stars, planets, maybe a place where we don't have to hide." He looked at her, the Pulsar's light reflecting in her eyes. "Somewhere we can just be." Zyra turned to him, her expression soft but fierce. "We'll find it, or we'll make it right here." Her hand found his, her fingers intertwining. "I'm not giving you up, Caleb. Not to Eagle, not to anyone." He squeezed her hand, his voice steady. "Same here. You're a mess, Zyra, but you're my mess. The kind I want to keep forever." She laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. "A mess? Careful, technician, or I'll make your floors dirtier than ever." She leaned closer, her lips brushing his, a kiss that was slow and warm, like a star igniting in the dark. "But I like your kind of mess." Caleb pulled her closer, their breaths mingling, the Pulsar's pulses syncing with the rhythm in his chest. "Then keep making it, Zyra. I'm not going anywhere." She smiled against his lips, her voice a whisper. "Good, because I've got plans for you." She pulled back, her eyes sparkling, starting with a late-night inspection. "You in?" "Always," Caleb said, his grin matching hers. "Just name a time and place." Zyra stood, offering him a hand, her jumpsuit catching the light like a comet's tail. "You'll know when I call. Keep your comms open, technician." She paused, her gaze lingering. "And keep that heart of yours ready. I'm not done with it." The observation deck stretched wide around them, the Pulsar's light bathing the room in a cosmic glow, each pulse a reminder of a universe beyond Pulsar's walls. Caleb rose, taking her hand, her silver skin cool under his fingers, her touch grounding him in the vastness. They stood together, side by side, the stars spinning above, their reflections dancing on the transparent steel. The air was alive with possibility, the faint scent of lavender and ozone clinging to her, a promise of more moments to come. Zyra's voice broke the quiet, soft but certain. "We're brighter than that Pulsar, Caleb. They'll see it one day." He nodded, his hand tightening around hers. "Let him try to dim us. They'll lose." She laughed, pulling him toward the exit, her stride confident, her silhouette sharp against the violet light. The deck faded behind them, but the warmth of her touch lingered, a spark that no regulation could extinguish. Pulsar's rules were a shadow, but their love was a light, burning fierce and unyielding, with a future as open as the stars themselves.